You probably checked your phone within like, what, 5 minutes of waking up today?
Oh, yeah, almost certainly. Most people do.
Right. And statistically speaking, within 10 to 15 minutes of that exact action, you felt this, I don't know, this low-grade sense of anxiety.
Yeah, or just a sudden flash of inadequacy.
Exactly. Or even just a heavy, unexplainable exhaustion. And what's wild is that if someone came up and asked you why you suddenly felt so drained, you probably couldn't give them a straight answer.
You just say, I'm tired or something, yeah?
Right. But what if I told you that a 2,500-year-old psychological algorithm perfectly predicted that exact morning routine?
It's honestly a stunning realization when you first encounter it.
It really is. I mean, not only did it predict the feeling, but it actually provides the exact blueprint, like the line-by-line code of why your mind reacts that way to a glowing rectangle in your hand.
We tend to view our modern psychological landscape as this uniquely complicated, unprecedented mess. We think our burnout and our stress are just byproducts of the 21st century.
Oh, totally. We blame the internet, the news.
Exactly. But the mechanics of that exhaustion, the actual machinery operating behind the scenes of your anxiety, it was documented with breathtaking precision millennia before the first microchip was ever even thought of.
So welcome to today's deep dive. We are stepping into some incredibly profound territory today, and we've got a very specific, highly actionable mission for you.
We really do.
We are going to unpack this ancient psychological framework, one that isolates the exact origin point of the everyday stress and suffering you and I feel all the time.
And we aren't just going to look at it as some dusty museum piece either.
No, absolutely not. We're going to apply this ancient blueprint directly to our modern hyper-connected lives. We want to find out where that invisible fire is coming from and, honestly, more importantly, how to put it out.
Which is so crucial. The brilliance of the material we're exploring today is that it treats the human mind with the exact same objective precision as a physicist treats gravity.
Or like a biologist looking at cellular division, right?
Right. Right. It doesn't view suffering as a moral failing or some random curse from the universe. It breaks down the invisible fire of our daily anxiety into a step-by-step mechanical, almost industrial process.
And the source material guiding us today is just an absolute revelation. It comes to us from a translated excerpt of a video presentation by Dr. Athip Asivanand.
A fantastic breakdown.
It really is. The title of the piece translates to Vedana, Tana, Upadana, the cycle that burns us every day.
Such a powerful title.
Yeah. And in this excerpt, Dr. Asivanand takes a concept that scholars have literally debated in monasteries and universities for thousands of years, and he essentially translates it into an operational manual for anyone currently holding a smartphone.
And that act of translation is what makes this specific text so vital. He bridges the gap between ancient philosophy and contemporary neuroscience, and he does it without losing the core truth of either one.
Right, he grounds it.
He does. He takes a profoundly deep philosophical architecture and demonstrates how it is operating in real time, in the very specific, mundane moments of our daily routines.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand the granular details, we first have to look at the massive overarching concept the source introduces. It's this foundational term called Padakasamuppada.
Padikasamuppada, yes.
Could you break that down for us?
Absolutely. So in the context of the text we're analyzing, this is the Buddha's highly detailed sequential explanation of the exact chain of causes that makes suffering arise in the human mind.
Okay.
The term is most frequently translated into English as dependent origination. And what's fascinating here is that it completely strips away any mystical or esoteric confusion surrounding why we hurt.
So it's not about bad karma or bad luck.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It presents suffering as a strict chain reaction. It posits that condition A arises, which inevitably triggers condition B, which then chemically and psychologically necessitates condition C.
Wow.
And condition C is the fire that burns you.
So if I'm understanding the geometry of this, it's literally an algorithm. It's an if-then statement running in the human brain.
That is the perfect way to visualize it. It is a psychological algorithm.
And the text gets really specific about which part of the code we need to look at, doesn't it?
It does. The source text explicitly states that while the full algorithm of dependent origination is quite long and complex, there is one highly specific, highly volatile sequence within that massive code that we desperately need to memorize.
The part that's draining our battery.
Exactly. It's a specific chunk of code that is running in the background of our minds all day long. That three-part sequence is Vedana, Tana, and Upadana.
Okay, so to understand how this whole burning cycle operates, to really drill down into why you, the listener, might feel completely drained after merely swiping through a social feed for 5 minutes. We have to start at the absolute origin point.
We have to look at the very first spark in this three-part chain.
Right. And according to the source, that initial spark is the concept of Vedana.
Vedana is the foundational block of our moment-to-moment experience. The text defines it with absolute clinical precision.
How so?
Well, it says, Vedana is the feeling that arises whenever the mind comes into contact with an object, a sensation, or an emotion.
Just contact, any contact at all.
Any contact whatsoever. It is a relentless, continuous process.
So it's happening all the time.
All the time. The text makes a point to explicitly note that every single time you hear a sound, smell an odor, taste a flavor, touch a surface, or even just have a spontaneous thought arise in your own brain,
Wait, even a thought?
even an internal thought, the mind is making contact. And the immediate, unavoidable, instantaneous physiological and psychological result of that contact is Vedana.
Let me pause you there because this is what's blowing my mind. We are talking about a reaction time measured in microseconds here.
Literally microseconds.
Like you are sitting at your desk and you hear a car horn blare outside your window. That auditory data hits your eardrum, travels up the auditory nerve, your brain processes the frequency, and boom, Vedana.
Exactly.
You walk past a bakery and smell fresh bread, boom, Vedana. You're just sitting in silence and you suddenly remember an awkward email you sent 3 years ago.
Oh, we've all been there.
Right. And that's an internal thought, not even an external physical sensation, and still, boom, Vedana.
It is the unavoidable reality of having a functioning nervous system. If you are conscious, Vedana is happening. You can think of it as the raw, unfiltered data of human experience being processed into a fundamental baseline feeling.
So it's just raw data.
Yeah, and what the source does next is categorize this feeling very strictly. It states that this instantaneous reaction, this Vedana, only ever comes in 3 distinct non-negotiable flavors.
That feels almost too simple, honestly. I mean, human emotion is incredibly complex, but the text argues for only 3 massive buckets.
Just 3 buckets. The text breaks them down as well. There's happy, which is referred to in the original language as sukha.
Okay, sukha.
Then there's suffering or sad, which is dukkha.
Yeah.
And finally, the third category, which is simply neutral or indifferent.
Happy, sad, or neutral. That is the entire spectrum of the initial spark. So, applying this to the listener's daily life, let's say you take a sip of perfectly brewed coffee in the morning. The brain registers the caffeine and the flavor profile, and the Vedana is happy.
Right.
You stub your toe on the edge of the bed frame. The nerve endings fire a distress signal, and the Vedana is suffering.
Exactly.
You are staring at the gray carpet in a doctor's waiting room. Nothing is particularly stimulating, nothing is hurting you, and the Vedana is neutral.
That is the exact biological sorting system the text is describing. Every single piece of sensory or mental data that you encounter from the moment you wake up to the moment you fall asleep is immediately subconsciously sorted into one of those 3 buckets.
I was trying to come up with a way to really visualize this for you, the listener, because it can sound a bit abstract when we use ancient terms. And the analogy that kept coming to me as I read the source material is that Vedana is essentially just, well, it's the weather.
Oh, I like that. The weather.
Yeah. Think about stepping outside your front door. You open the door, and sometimes it's a brilliantly sunny 72-degree day. Sometimes it's sleeting and freezing, and sometimes it's just overcast, a bit gray, neither warm nor cold.
The environment presents itself, and your sensory apparatus simply registers the atmospheric conditions.
Exactly. You didn't create the weather. You didn't wake up and consciously decide, I am going to manifest a low-pressure storm system today. You just stepped outside, and the rain fell on your jacket.
It just happens to you.
Vedana is exactly like that.
Yeah.
You didn't consciously choose to find the smell of exhaust fumes repulsive. Your biology just registers it as suffering.
Right.
You didn't choose for an old song on the radio to make you smile. Your memory bank's just associated with joy, and the Vedana is happy. It is a biological and psychological data point. It is completely 100% natural.
And what's fascinating here is that the text makes a very specific, emphatic point to highlight this exact reality. The source states clearly, without any ambiguity, Vedana itself is not the fire.
The weather is not the problem.
That is a crucial distinction that overturns how most of us view our own stress. We operate under the assumption that feeling physical pain or feeling a flash of sadness is the ultimate problem we are trying to solve in our lives.
We think a bad feeling is a failure, like we did something wrong.
Exactly. But the text is arguing that Vedana occurs naturally. We absolutely cannot stop ourselves from feeling these initial reactions. If you have a functioning brain and a conscious mind, you are going to experience happy, sad, and neutral reactions.
The problem hasn't even started yet.
The fire, the actual psychological suffering that exhausts us and burns us out, hasn't even started yet at this stage.
It's just a spark. And a spark isn't a forest fire. It's just a momentary microscopic flash of heat or light.
If you step outside and it's raining, the rain is just a meteorological fact. The water hitting your skin is just sensory data. There is no inherent psychological suffering in the rain itself.
The suffering comes from what we do about the rain.
Yes. The suffering, the exhaustion, the anxiety, the burning, it only begins based on the exact mechanism of what happens next.
Okay, so if Vedana is just the weather, just the natural, unavoidable spark of a reaction to the world, what happens the exact microsecond after you step into the rain?
Yeah.
What happens the moment after that spark flashes in your brain?
Because we both know we don't just stand there objectively observing our feelings like scientists.
Right. We react to them. And that immediate reflexive reaction takes us to the next vital link in this chain. We move from the spark to the fuel. According to the source, the sequence moves from Vedana directly into a concept called Tanha.
Tanha. This is the point in the text where the mechanics of our daily modern stress really start to reveal themselves. The source defines Tanha very clearly as the want or the craving that immediately, almost symbiotically, follows Vedana.
So if Vedana is the feeling, Tanha is the craving associated with that feeling.
Yes. If Vedana is the raw, passive data of how this moment feels, Tanha is the mind's active, immediate, reflexive demand of what I want to do about it.
It's like it attaches itself to the feeling.
It's an automatic impulse that attaches itself to the feeling like a parasite. And the text maps out exactly how this craving operates depending on the situation.
Let's walk through those rules. It's kind of like a psychological flowchart. Let's look at the happy state first.
Okay, the sukha state.
Right. So if the initial Vedana is happy, say, you take a bite of an incredibly rich chocolate cake, or your boss gives you glowing feedback in a meeting, Tanha immediately arises in the mind and says, I want this to stay. I want this feeling to continue.
It is the craving for the permanence of a fleeting pleasure. The mind experiences a spike in dopamine, and the immediate reaction is a desperate desire to freeze time. Do not let this end.
Right, which is impossible.
Exactly. Now, let's trace the second pathway on that flowchart. If the Vedana is suffering or sad, you feel a sharp physical pain in your back, or you hear a subtle insult from a friend. Tanha flips the script entirely.
What does it do?
It immediately arises and demands, I want this to disappear right now. I want this reality gone.
Get me out of the rain immediately.
Yeah.
This situation is unacceptable to my nervous system.
It is the craving for the eradication of an unpleasant feeling. It is a complete, uncompromising rejection of the current reality you find yourself in.
Okay, so we have wanting the good things to stay forever and wanting the bad things to vanish instantly. Both of those make perfect evolutionary sense,
Yeah.
right? We've all felt that visceral pull.
Oh, absolutely. It's survival.
But here's where it gets really interesting for me, and where I think the source text speaks directly to the modern listener. Let's look at the third rule on the flowchart. What happens when the Vedana is just, well, neutral? What happens when it's just overcast and nothing particularly good or bad is happening?
The text zeroes in on this specific state with incredible insight because it reveals a deeply uncomfortable psychological truth about the human condition.
Which is?
If the Vedana is neutral or indifferent, Tanha does not just sit quietly and enjoy the peace. It says, I want to find something to fill this emptiness.
Wow. I want you, the listener, to really, truly think about how insidious that is in your own life. That feeling of just being okay, not ecstatic, not devastated.
Just baseline.
Just baseline. You're sitting in a waiting room or riding in an elevator for 8 floors or sitting on your couch on a Tuesday night while your partner is in the other room. That neutral state, that quiet baseline of existence feels almost intolerable to the modern human mind.
It is perceived by the mind not as peace, but as a threatening void.
Yes. A void that must be filled at all costs. That neutral Vedana triggers a Tanha that creates an intense physical craving just to consume, to stimulate, to find something to distract us from the quiet.
Which leads right to our pockets.
Exactly. It's the exact undeniable impulse that makes your hand reach into your pocket for your phone when you are stopped at a red light for more than 10 seconds. The light is red, you are safe. Nothing is happening, and your brain screams, give me input.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it really highlights the automatic, almost robotic nature of this entire sequence. You experience a feeling, a natural data point from your environment, and within milliseconds, this pre-programmed craving kicks in.
So fast.
And what is so vital to understand is what all three of these reactions have in common. Whether it's wanting to keep the good, wanting to banish the bad, or wanting to aggressively fill the neutral, they all share one fundamental characteristic.
Which is
They are all an immediate, violent resistance to reality.
resistance. That is the perfect word for it. It's an inability to just let the moment exist.
It is a total refusal to simply let the moment be what it actually is. If the moment is happy, Tana isn't content to just sit back and enjoy it. It begins to panic about the inevitable loss of that happiness.
Right, ruining the moment by worrying about it ending.
Exactly. If the moment is sad, Tana isn't willing to endure it or learn from it. It demands an immediate escape hatch. And if the moment is neutral, Tana absolutely cannot abide the stillness. It demands noise. It creates a constant, exhausting friction against the present moment.
You're just constantly fighting the weather. You're standing outside screaming at the clouds because it's raining, or begging the sun not to set because you like the warmth. And the weather doesn't care.
No, it doesn't.
The weather just keeps doing what it's going to do, and you are just exhausting yourself.
And that friction, that constant, unending demand that reality conform perfectly to our cravings, requires an immense, incalculable amount of psychological energy. That is why we feel so drained.
But the text gives us a severe warning right here. If the algorithm started at Tana, if we merely walked around the world wanting things, wanting comfort, wanting to avoid pain, wanting distraction, it might be incredibly exhausting, but it might still be manageable.
It would just be a series of passing, frustrating desires.
Right. But the source warns that Tana never travels alone. It doesn't just show up, make a demand of reality, and then leave. It drags a much heavier, much more dangerous burden right behind it.
The text states it explicitly, almost like a law of physics. Tana doesn't come alone. It always drags Upadana with it.
So we've moved from the initial spark of Vedana to the exhausting fuel of Tana. Now we arrive at the actual fire. We arrive at the trap of Upadana.
This is the critical escalation point in the psychological algorithm. Upadana is defined in the source text as the state of clinging or intense attachment.
Clinging.
Yes, but the text reveals the most dangerous, hidden mechanism of this clinging. Upadana is the exact moment when holding on tightly transforms a simple, passing desire into a rigid sense of self or identity.
Wow. So it stops being about what you want, and it metastasizes into who you are.
Precisely. It is the crystallization of a craving into an identity. It's the moment the ego fully wraps itself around the desire.
And the source provides some examples for this, right?
It does. 3 specific, incredibly powerful examples to illustrate this exact psychological shift. It shows us the precise mechanism of how a simple, natural desire warps into toxic clinging.
Let's carefully walk through these examples, because this is where the theoretical framework hits the pavement of our actual lives. The first example the text gives is about love and relationships.
It starts with a very human, deeply understandable desire. I want love. That is tanha. It is a craving for a positive experience, a desire for a happy Vedana. There is nothing inherently wrong with wanting connection.
Of course not.
But when Upadana drags it down, when the clinging takes over the operating system, that simple want transforms. The text says it becomes, I must have them, otherwise I have no value.
Do you see the terrifying jump there?
Yeah.
I want the listener to really feel the weight of that shift. We go from a healthy desire to connect with another human being to suddenly making that other person's affection the absolute load-bearing foundation of your own self-worth.
The stakes become absolute.
Exactly. If they leave, or if they don't text you back, or if they don't love you the exact way you want, it's not just that you don't get what you want. The internal narrative becomes, I have no value. I am inherently worthless.
The identity of the individual becomes entirely enmeshed with the outcome of the craving. The survival of the ego is now perceived to be at stake.
Okay, let's look at the second example from the text. It deals with ambition and career.
It starts with the Tana. I want to succeed.
Again, incredibly normal, evolutionarily advantageous even. Who doesn't want to succeed at what they do?
True, but observe the mechanism of Upadana. Under the weight of clinging, that desire works. It becomes, I must win, otherwise I am a failure.
The stakes suddenly become completely existential again. It's no longer a project you want to do well on. The outcome of the project is a referendum on your justification for existing.
Right, you become the failure. And the third example the source gives is about social acceptance. The initial Tana is, I want people to accept me.
which, again, human nature, we are tribal animals.
Absolutely. But through the lens of Upadana, that simple social desire crystallizes into, I must be famous, otherwise I don't exist.
Otherwise, I don't exist. That is such a heavy, haunting phrase used in the text. I must be perceived, I must be validated by the crowd, or I'm literally nothing.
It's the ultimate clinging.
But, I want to pause here and actually push back on this framework a little bit on behalf of the listener, because I'm sure people are wondering this. Let's look at that second example again, the one about career and success.
Yeah.
I want to succeed, turning into I must win.
Okay, let's look at it.
Wait a minute. Isn't ambition a fundamentally good thing? Isn't that intense drive to win exactly what builds companies, cures diseases, creates masterpiece works of art?
It certainly drives progress.
Right. I'm struggling to see the exact mechanism here. At what exact microsecond does a healthy, motivating desire to succeed a normal Tana curdle into this toxic, burning Upadana?
That is the essential million-dollar question when engaging with this philosophy. And the source actually provides the exact resolution to that pushback. It identifies the precise threshold.
What is the threshold?
The turning point, the exact microsecond, the healthy desire curdles, is when the mind cannot let go.
Let me make sure I'm hearing that right. When it cannot let go.
Yes. The text says that Upadana enters until the mind cannot let go. Let's break down the mechanism of that.
Please do.
When a desire is healthy, when it is just tanha without upadana, you can strive for a goal with incredible intensity, but your core identity remains structurally intact whether you achieve the goal or not.
So you're still you, either way.
Exactly. You can desperately want the promotion, you can work 80 hours a week for it, and if the boss gives it to someone else, you are deeply disappointed. You experience a sad vedana.
Which is normal weather.
Right, it's normal weather, but you don't psychologically collapse. Upadana is the threshold where the outcome becomes an absolute, non-negotiable condition for your self-worth. If you don't get the promotion under the influence of Upadana, you aren't just a person who experienced a disappointment. You are a failure. The noun replaces the verb.
Your entire sense of self, your psychological structural integrity, is being held hostage by a situation you cannot completely control. You've handed the keys to your identity over to an external outcome.
Exactly. And the text makes a definitive foundational statement right here. It explicitly states that this specific moment, the specific moment of clinging, this tying of identity to a craving, is exactly where the suffering begins to truly burn us.
So it's not the initial start. It's not the weather.
No, the text says this is where the suffering really burns us, not a Vedana, but where Tana and Upadana add on to it. The natural weather of life, the pain, the loss, the aging, doesn't fundamentally burn your psyche.
It's just reality doing its thing.
Right. What destroys you is the absolute, unyielding demand that the weather be different, combined with the deeply held belief that your worth as a human being depends entirely on your ability to control the rain.
Man, that is powerful. So we have this ancient, meticulous, incredibly dense breakdown. Vedana flashes as a raw feeling. Tana reacts with a desperate craving, and Upadana locks that craving into a rigid identity crisis. The spark, the fuel, the fire.
That's the sequence.
So what does this all mean for you listening to this right now in the 21st century? Because it's one thing to talk about monks meditating on ancient texts thousands of years ago in a quiet forest.
It feels very distant from our reality.
Right. It is another thing entirely to deal with a crowded Tuesday morning commute, a demanding boss, and a smartphone vibrating in your pocket every 3 minutes.
A completely different environment.
But the incredible thing about the source material we're looking at today is that Dr. Asivanand doesn't leave this in the abstract. He brings this ancient wisdom right into the palm of our hands. He gives us very specific, modern, technological scenarios to observe.
He actively prompts the audience to take this ancient algorithmic lens and point it directly at their daily digital routines. He provides 3 highly relatable, almost uncomfortably familiar scenarios of modern interaction.
Okay, let's get into these. The first scenario he asks us to observe is this. What exactly does your mind do when you open your phone and see a certain piece of news?
Let's map the ancient framework directly onto this modern action. You open your phone, you see a headline that goes violently against your political views, or reports on a blatant injustice.
Something that just immediately triggers you.
Right. The immediate sensory contact your eyes, taking in the words on the screen, creates Vedana. In this specific case, it's a painful feeling. A spike of cortisol, anger, frustration, sadness. It is dukkha.
The weather is bad.
Yes, the weather is bad. Then, mere milliseconds later, Tana kicks in, the craving. Your brain demands that this reality disappear. You want to fight it. You feel an overwhelming urge to jump into the comment section to prove to strangers how wrong they are, to correct the universe.
And if the algorithm stopped there, you might just swipe past the article feeling slightly annoyed. But as we know, it rarely stops there.
Right. Then the trap of Upadana clamps down. You cling to the reaction. You don't just want the news to be different. You subconsciously identify yourself as the righteous defender of truth against these ignorant idiots. Your entire sense of self becomes wrapped up in being the angry, intellectual opposition to whatever that headline represents. And suddenly your heart rate is up, your morning is ruined, and you are carrying that hostility into your real-world interactions. You are burning.
Because you made the news headline a part of your identity.
Exactly.
The second scenario the text gives is even more personal and honestly a bit exposing. It asks, what does your mind do when you post something online and you see fewer likes or less engagement than you expected?
This is a universal modern experience. You post a photo you feel good about, you check back 20 minutes later, the engagement is low.
Crickets.
Right. The visual contact with that low number creates the Vedana. It's a feeling of slight sinking sadness or maybe an uncomfortable, hollow, neutral feeling.
Then the Tana arrives right on schedule. The craving for validation. The desperate desire to fill that hollow void with the dopamine hit of a notification. Your brain is saying, I want more people to click that button. I need that number to go up.
And then the psychological trap snaps shut. Upadana, the clinging. It is no longer just a mild desire for a digital thumbs up.
What does it become?
The internal narrative shifts to, I am invisible. I am irrelevant. My peers don't care about me. I am falling behind. The simple lack of digital engagement transforms into a full-blown crisis of identity and self-worth.
If I don't have the likes, I don't exist. Which perfectly mirrors that ancient example from the text we discussed earlier. The human mind hasn't changed. Only the delivery mechanism has.
That's entirely true. The mind is running the same software it did 2,000 years ago.
And the third scenario from the source is perhaps the most insidious, because it happens in professional environments all the time, completely silently. The text asks, what does your mind do when you see peers or younger colleagues become more successful than you?
So you log on to a professional networking site or you hear gossip by the coffee machine. A younger coworker gets the promotion you thought you were in line for. The Vedana is immediate suffering, a sharp, undeniable pang of envy or inadequacy.
The Tana is the want. I want that success. I want that recognition. I want to take away their success so I can have it for myself.
Right. And the Upadana locks the identity in. Because they succeeded and I did not, I am fundamentally a failure.
And there's that shift again.
The intense clinging to the idea of where you should be in your career completely, utterly obliterates your ability to exist peacefully in where you actually are.
Let me pull back for a second, because looking at all three of these examples, these aren't just random anecdotes of having a bad day. These are highly engineered, incredibly deliberate environments. Think about your phone. Think about the social media feeds, the news aggregators, the professional networking sites. They're designed from the ground up to provide an endless, rapid-fire stream of contact.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's a profound and slightly terrifying way to look at the technology we use every day. Modern digital interfaces are essentially high-speed Vedana delivery systems.
Yes. High-speed Vedana delivery systems. That is exactly what they are. They are firing sparks at your visual and auditory cortex at a rate that the human brain has simply never evolved to handle.
It's an overload.
It is. In a single 5-minute scroll, you are hit with 1,000 headlines, 100 photos of your friends on lavish vacations, 50 career updates from people you went to high school with, and 3 videos of global tragedies. Spark, 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 spark.
And with every single spark, the interface is constantly, relentlessly prodding your mind, testing the perimeter to see if Tana and Upadana will take the bait.
That's a scary thought.
It is. It delivers the neutral Vedana of an infinite scroll just waiting for the Tana of boredom to kick in, which inevitably leads to the Upadana of identifying as a passive consumer of that content.
Right.
It delivers the suffering Vedana of political outrage, waiting for the Upadana of tribal identity to lock you into a furious argument with a stranger.
You know, it's exhausting just talking about the mechanics of it. Because if we are being completely honest with ourselves, this sounds like a terrifying, completely unavoidable trap.
It really can feel that way.
The cycle moves so incredibly fast. From the microsecond my eyes scan the headline, to the craving to fight, to the identity of being furious, it ignites before we even consciously realize we've been burned. It happens in the time it takes to blink. We are outmatched by the speed of our own biology.
We are.
So the ultimate question is, does the source material offer a way out? Does it offer a practical way to short-circuit this fire? Or are we just mathematically doomed to burn every single time we open our phones or interact with the world?
The source absolutely offers a way out, and it's not just an afterthought. It is the most crucial foundational piece of the entire framework. It provides the extinguisher for the fire.
Thank you.
The text states very clearly that this suffering, this entire algorithmic chain reaction, ignites immediately and unknowingly only if a very specific element is missing from the mind.
And what is that element? What breaks the code?
The term the text uses is sati.
Sati. Okay, let's break that down.
Sati translates into English most commonly as mindfulness or acute awareness. The text reveals a vital, life-saving caveat. The cycle of Vedana, Tanha, and Upalana burns us entirely because there is no sati to know it or catch it in time.
Let's deeply analyze the actual mechanics of this intervention, because I want to be very careful here. I don't want this to sound to the listener like some vague, generic, just take a deep breath and be mindful self-help advice.
It's much more precise than that.
The text is describing a highly precise, almost surgical intervention in a psychological process. We've already established that you absolutely cannot stop Vedana. The spark is going to happen. You cannot turn off your nervous system.
Correct. You cannot stop the contact with the world. You cannot stop the weather.
And if we're being truly realistic about human nature, you often can't even stop the initial flash of Tanha. That reflexive craving, that deep evolutionary desire for comfort or the intense biological urge to avoid pain is going to arise. It's built into our DNA.
It is hardwired into our biology for survival. You can't just wish it away.
Right. So if I can't stop the feeling and I can't stop the initial craving, where does sati actually fit into the machinery? How does awareness actually save you from the fire?
Sati is the act of spotting the sequence before it solidifies into identity. It is the cultivated ability to observe the craving, the tanha, without allowing it to harden into upadana.
So is it like a wedge?
Yes. Sati creates a microsecond of psychological space between the stimulus and the identity.
I think we need a really concrete analogy here for the listener to grasp how physical this intervention feels.
Yeah.
Let's imagine this entire cycle of Vedana, Tanha, Upadana, and the resulting fire of suffering as a long line of heavy dominoes set up on a table.
Okay, a sequence of dominoes. I can picture that.
You cannot stop the first domino from falling. That's Vedana. The world pushes it. The news headline, the low light count, the stub toe, and it falls. It is a law of physics.
The contact happens.
Exactly. And because it falls, it is inevitably going to strike and knock over the second domino.
Yeah.
That's Tanha. The craving happens. The desire to scream or the desire to drink or the desire to isolate yourself.
The reaction to the contact.
But sati, this specific type of mindfulness, this acute, real-time awareness, is not about trying to hold the first domino upright. It's not about trying to pretend you aren't feeling what you're feeling.
Which is what most people try to do when they try to be mindful. They try to block the feeling.
Right. But sati is the profound act of slipping your finger squarely between the second and third domino.
Oh, that's brilliant. You intervene in the physical chain reaction. You let the momentum of the first two happen, but you block the transfer of energy to the third.
Exactly. I want the listener to imagine the actual friction of that. You watch the first one fall. You acknowledge the pain or the happiness or the crushing boredom.
You observe the Vedana.
Right. And then you watch the second one fall. You acknowledge the intense, almost unbearable craving. Wow, I really desperately want to argue with this person online right now. Or, wow, I feel a terrifying need for validation from my coworkers today. You observe it happening. You feel the heat of it.
You see the Tanha.
But by simply observing it, by naming it in your mind, you put your finger down on the table, the chain stops. It doesn't hit the third domino. It doesn't become Upadana. It doesn't become you.
You step out of the identity trap.
Right. You experience the desire, but you don't get burned by the identity crisis.
That is a phenomenal visualization of the mechanism. Sati is the insertion of pure, non-judgmental observation into a previously mechanical, unconscious process.
Non-judgmental being key there.
Very key. And the source emphasizes just how crucial this insertion is with a final, incredibly powerful warning. The text notes that without this awareness, without this sati, the suffering rises up and consumes us without us even knowing when it started.
That is the most relatable sentence in the entire text. We just suddenly realize we are on fire, our heart is racing, we are miserable, and we have absolutely no idea how we got there. We just think, I guess I'm just an anxious person today.
We completely miss the causal chain. We blame the news anchor, we blame the algorithm, we blame our coworker for being too successful.
Oh, we love blaming the external triggers.
Exactly, because we completely missed the internal high-speed chain reaction that occurred in our own minds. The ultimate power, according to this ancient framework, doesn't lie in controlling the external world. That is impossible.
We can't control the weather.
The power lies entirely in the observing of your own mind's reactions.
So let's pull all this together and summarize the massive journey we've taken today. We explored a deeply precise, mechanical blueprint of exactly how human suffering is generated, according to this brilliantly translated excerpt of Dr. Asivanan's lecture on Padakasamuppada.
It's been quite a ride.
It has. We started with the unavoidable, deeply natural spark of feeling Vedana, the sensory weather of happy, sad, or neutral that you and I step into every single time we open our eyes.
From there, we traced how that sensory spark immediately, biologically ignites the fuel of Tanha, the automatic reflexive craving of the human animal to hold on to the good forever, to destroy the bad immediately, or to blindly, desperately fill the neutral emptiness with noise and distraction.
And we saw how that craving, if left entirely unchecked by awareness, inevitably drags us into the roaring fire of Upadana. The terrifying moment when a passing natural desire crystallizes into toxic clinging.
The ego trap.
The moment where our very identity, our ego, and our core self-worth become held hostage by external outcomes we can't control, where simply wanting to be loved warps into I have no value, and wanting to succeed warps into I am fundamentally a failure.
And finally, we looked at the extinguisher for the fire, the cooling water of sati, or mindfulness, the radical, courageous act of simply observing the chain reaction in real time, inserting a pause between the falling dominoes, and preventing the temporary craving from hardening into a permanent identity.
It is an incredibly empowering framework, even though it requires confronting some very uncomfortable truths about how our own minds operate on autopilot.
Uncomfortable, but necessary.
But before we sign off today, there is one final, incredibly provocative thought that emerges when you overlay this ancient text directly onto our modern reality.
I've been thinking about this ever since we started prepping for this deep dive.
I know exactly what you're going to bring up.
We talked earlier about how our digital world is essentially a high-speed Vedana delivery system. But looking at the exact examples the source provided, it makes you wonder about the intent behind the architecture.
Yes. If we look closely at the specific examples, the source highlighted the outrage generated by the news, the desperate craving for likes and validation, the intense comparison with peers on networking sites. It raises a very unsettling but necessary question about the modern world.
I'll let you take this one because it really reframes everything we've talked about. Okay, so if this ancient framework so perfectly, so mathematically maps out the exact mechanics of human psychological suffering, if a text based on thousands of years of human observation specifically identifies the craving for validation, the automatic anger at provocation, and the terror of empty neutrality as the primary, most powerful engines of human misery, we have to ask ourselves a question.
A big question.
Could it be that the architects of our modern social platforms, the engineers designing the algorithms that feed us our feeds and tally our metrics, aren't just accidentally triggering this cycle?
Wait.
What if they have intentionally, meticulously reverse-engineered the Vedana Tana Upadana loop?
Oh, wow.
What if they have taken this exact ancient blueprint for human suffering, studied its mechanics, and used it to transform our deepest, most primal psychological vulnerabilities into their primary engagement metrics?
That is.
We have to ask ourselves, are we just casual users of technology, or are we being systematically, algorithmically farmed for our upadana?
Wow. That is a thought that will definitely change how you look at the glowing rectangle in your hand. The next time you pick up your phone, the next time you feel that sudden, inexplicable spike of anger at a headline, or that hollow drop in your stomach when a post doesn't land, just try to watch the dominoes fall.
Just observe it.
See if you can slip your finger in before the fire starts. Thank you, as always, for taking this deep dive with us. Keep your eyes open out there.